Really? Sweet. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Daniel. I am the Senior Product Manager for Cloud Computing here at Vox Telecom. With us today, we have Barry Kemp. He heads up our Managed Service Department for Cloud, specifically, and for on-site. And then Hendrik Meyburgh, he is our technical head for our core team. So he's the one that actually physically builds our cloud environment for Vox. Today we want to discuss a little bit about multi-cloud and what multi-cloud is. I think the concept is quite vast and people don't always understand 100% of why they want to why they need multi-cloud. And this is what we want to discuss today. Multi-cloud is essentially different applications on or using different cloud platforms for different applications that you want or need to use in your business. Before we start there, just a little bit of admin. Can we just, all questions, can we just hold that until the end? There will be an opportunity for you guys to ask any questions. And then there's if you have any technical issues, just chat in the chat box. We've got an administrator who will attend to that. Nina, thank you. Okay, so I think we can start. Hendrik, Barry, are you guys ready?
Yeah. Yep, let's go.
Yeah, okay. So to dive right into it, I mean, we've got all these multi-cloud companies who, some of them have launched in South Africa already. Huawei we know about, and Azure we know about. AWS we know is landing early next year, or that's the pin they put in the ground. And then Google Cloud will probably come soon after that as well. So with all these multi-cloud companies rushing to South Africa, what are the trends that we have noticed that will be that we're seeing these companies drive into the SA market?
So I think from our perspective, one of the key things is that the multi-cloud vendors are trying to get a full foothold into Africa. And South Africa has one of the most developed ICT industries in the continent. So it makes sense for them to open a data center here and then use that as a springboard into Africa.
And I think specifically from a latency point of view, there's been a lot of discussions in terms of using the multi-clouds out of the European regions, where latency and data locality has been a problem in the past. And with them coming to South Africa, that effectively means that more cloud adoption is possible.
Okay. I mean, for me, I think there's quite a big drive into bringing technology and South Africa closer to the world. There's been a tradition of thinking that South Africa is quite behind in the tech market, but I think these companies landing in South Africa, or especially using South Africa as the stepping board into Africa, it puts us into the forefront and with the rest of the world when it comes to cloud and technology. So, saying all of that, what has the reaction been that you guys have noticed to them coming to South Africa?
So I think it's probably a bit slower than they would have liked, but I think it will pick up as we go along with people becoming more and more comfortable using an international cloud vendor. But it doesn't mean that they have to just use one particular vendor. So they do have a bit of a choice there.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think from a global perspective, the trends are still clear that the application is still the driver, right? And that should be your selection in terms of multi-cloud. And the consumption model, that's still a positive drive as well, right? Because it moves you away from the big ticket CapEx items.
Yeah, I think there's quite a big drive from our side. I know we've adopted the model of pay-as-you-go model as well. I think a lot of companies are tired of the contracted services. They want the option and the flexibility of only paying for what they use. And that, I mean, sorry, Dave.
And I think that in the old days, in the big bad CapEx expenditure days, you would have to plan your life 3 years in advance. So you'd say, okay, I've got this application, it needs X amount of compute, and we need, in 3 years' time, we're going to need 40% more capacity than we have now. So I have to go and buy 40% bigger hardware than I have today to cater for that. Whereas in the cloud world, whether it's multi-cloud, whether it's our VDC, or any of the other cloud solutions, you can say, I can plan for today, and I can grow into my capacity instead of having to plan for that capacity. And that's probably one of the key drivers of going to a cloud, any cloud, multi-cloud, or single cloud environment, is that ability to start with today's load and then scale it.
Yes, and it's exactly like you say, the capacity, but what's important is the technology changes as well. Different CPU generation models and different memory speeds, SSDs, we all hear all flash, all of that capability. You can't, the reality is that cloud gives you an ability to use that as you require them.
Yeah. But I mean, all of these companies are offering all of these services. That it doesn't give us a very big differentiator. But I mean, do we think? I mean, is the differentiators on the hypervisor level, the actual application that does the virtualization, that builds these cloud environments on top of the physical stack? What are the differences between these hypervisors? And are the mega clouds actually better than local companies? Because local companies, quite a few of us, including Vox, have actually used VMware as a hypervisor for our cloud environments that we've built.
Well, getting into that sort of debate is very similar to that of which bakkie is better. Is it a Toyota or a Ford? Right? It's always a lot of opinion based. And what is true for you to see is, what is that you want to use cloud for? And then you can start looking at the different feature sets that's available and to understand where to place that specific requirement.
Yeah. Barry? I know you're a fan of multi-clouds.
So it's a horses for courses approach. You have to decide what cloud or what solution is going to work for your application best. Yeah, if you're going to run just single VMs, our Vox VDC is a compelling offering. If you're going to try run AI or machine learning, then you'd start looking at a multi-cloud vendor that has those services baked into their model. And that's the point of multi-cloud. You don't have to be stuck with one particular solution. You could use it across various solutions and pick the best of breed from each of those different offerings and put them together as a single solution to serve your company. For example, we've got a customer that has a couple of different dev teams, and some of the dev teams are AWS. They love AWS, and they'll always use AWS, so they can. It's no problem. And they've got another dev team that is very Azure focused and Microsoft focused, and they can use their skills on the Azure stack. But it all comes together to provide the company with a single sort of solution.
Well, and the thing is that you can, in that particular type of use case, you can, for example, have your data store on one cloud vendor and your applications in another one, because the majority of the applications that's available these days is in any way API driven, and you access it as required.
Yeah, I think from a sales or from a product perspective, I think we've realized this probably about a year and a half ago that, and the reason why Vox has taken the stance of a cloud neutral provider where we will provide you with whatever cloud you need is that applications actually live better on different platforms, and there's use cases across all of these platforms. The single vendor or the single cloud strategy is really not a strategy anymore. There is no single silver bullet that you can get.
And probably one of the key things.
Yeah, sorry, Barry.
So one of the other key sort of use cases of a proper multi-cloud strategy is to use a different cloud to back up your main cloud. So let's say you've got services in our VDC, our virtual data center. You can back that up to Azure so that you have a replicated environment in a different cloud. So if there's an issue, you can switch over to the different provider without having to worry about the sort of underlying infrastructure that's running.
Yeah. So seeing that they all same but different, I think the UIs the user interfaces will play a big difference there. But how would people actually choose what cloud to go to? I mean, if they're all very similar on a basis level, I mean, how can customers make a choice? How did Vox make a choice?
Well, I'll go back to the original requirements as to what it is that you want to achieve, and I'll give a quick example. As if you take a look at, for example, your company's website, which is your online presence, and then you have to go ask the questions as to what sort of language is the thing coded in. Is it ASP, PHP, Python, or any sort of other language? What's the set of requirements for that particular language to run your website in? And then, do you want to maintain just the code of the website, or do you actually want to run the application? So, for example, the Windows VM or the Linux VM, even stuff like the database. For example, are you a DBA, or do you just want to use a shopping cart, right? A SaaS type shopping cart. And that'll point you in the right directions to where you want to look at, to where to host your data.
Okay. Barry?
Yeah, I need to agree with Hendrik on that. Depends on what you want to be doing.
Okay. So, from a Vox perspective, have we actually seen any of these companies as a threat? Do we think that they're threats to local ICT providers in South Africa?
No, it's a partnership.
So from my perspective, I don't think so. Sorry, Barry, you can go.
One at a time, please.
It's like we said before, it's a partnership. So you'd use what's best for your business, and you would then so you may use multiple versions of different providers to do different things. It's not a if or.
Yeah.
Yeah, from my perspective, I don't think it's a threat. It's like Barry said, we're working together, and local is lekker. And we should be working together. And looking specifically at a company like Vox, where you can buy throughout the range of products, the access products, voice products, cloud products, and managed services, ties it all together. And you've got the capability to, for example, have you host your database with us, and for example, your website through a CDN cloud provider, right? It does work well.
I actually personally believe the one thing that they are lacking at the moment is that local network. If you take Vox, for example, our backbone is one of our biggest strengths. And we've got the capability of controlling traffic over our backbone where if you have just a cloud native platform without that backbone infrastructure, you're relying on all other providers to get that traffic into your data center.
And specifically MPLS, where your access network is protected in a VPN and bringing that VPN into the Vox Cloud.
Yeah. Well, if they're not really a threat to anybody, what are the biggest advantages that they actually bring? Are there any advantages that they actually bring?
So I think probably the biggest advantage that the mega clouds is the R&D budget is massive. I was reading somewhere that Microsoft has 4,000 people working in the security on Azure, just in the security division. Okay. So yeah, they've got that ability to throw lots and lots of resource at making sure it's secure and safe and reliable and that sort of thing. And that specifically comes into things like AI and machine learning. Those sort of technologies are going to be the backbone of the fourth industrial revolution, and they take some know-how to get running properly.
And that's exactly that. They're a technology enabler. They bring a whole bunch of technology to the table, which you can consume and use as you see fit. And for us, in building out the Vox Cloud, we also make key technology selectors so that we also get benefits out of all of those developers that work on the security platforms.
Yeah, I mean, from our view, from a product side, I think the biggest enablers are those services that companies locals in South Africa just doesn't have the capacity to get to. I mean, if you look at AI, these are all third-party services that we would have to add onto it. I think they bring that international look and feel to South Africa. And again, I think, Barry, you had a story earlier on while we were practicing about the fiber and somebody you know about fiber in different countries. I mean, our fiber build is so strong in South Africa that it enables us to get to all of these services. So it brings that international technology to South Africa where the traditional 5-10 year gap has been breached. And I think we're sitting on the forefront of technology and cloud at the moment. I think I mentioned that already.
No, definitely. Yeah, the story you're referring to was my brother-in-law in the UK. His fiber line at home is actually just fiber to the street box, and then they've got copper cables running into the house. So it's not true fiber like you get in South Africa, where you actually have fiber running into your house right to your router. And the UK is a fairly first world country. So I don't think that we're that far behind in the general technology stakes, specifically in things like cloud and that sort of thing.
Well, I think just imagine, the added benefit that has to customers in South Africa to take their applications or their cloud environments to their end users. It's a much greater benefit for us than in a lot of places. Are you guys happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we obviously are in a multi-cloud world now. We've been sprung into it in the beginning of this year. We have all these international vendors. Where does multi-cloud really fit?
So from my side, I think it's definitely that it's it's not a question of should we be running multi-cloud. It's definitely a must, right? There are applications that's well suited to a particular cloud vendor and other ones is not. And a good example there could be Office 365, right? You won't run Office 365 on AWS. It just doesn't work.
Barry?
Yeah, so we did touch on it earlier, and it's definitely something that as a business you should be looking at, because you might find a solution that is better in the cloud, and I mentioned it earlier, it's the machine learning AI environments. That is specifically where the mega clouds and the bigger clouds play, and it would be difficult for you to bring up your own machine learning AI solution running on your own servers. And rather let somebody that's been doing it for years run it and provide that service to you.
Okay. And how can customers and Vox customers actually leverage cloud in a best practice? I know we're all talking about ISO compliance. We're all talking about POPI. We're talking about uptime. I know from a network perspective, there's a lot of corporate policies in place to have different providers in place. So how can we leverage multi-cloud or multiple cloud environments as a best practice solution?
So once again, it comes down to having your eggs in two baskets, not in one basket, in two baskets, so to speak. So yeah, run your main environment in, let's call it in our Vox VDC, and then replicate it out into Azure. You have exactly the same set of services in both places, and you can have the ability to automatically switch between them. And when I say automatically, I mean literally automatically. If it picks up that one of the environments is down, it'll automatically switch across to another environment. And that is possible in this day and age. So it makes you, obviously there's a cost to everything, but quite a cost-effective, completely redundant solution.
And Hendrik, from your side, is Vox geared to deliver services over into multiple cloud environments? Like
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's from a software-defined networking point of view and a security point of view, we selected our tooling to make it possible for you as a customer to effectively make the switch as easy as possible.
Yeah. And then I think the biggest question here is for you, Barry. I mean, you head up our managed service department. What is the value that managed services is going to have to customers? I mean, especially with all these user interfaces that these multi-cloud environments are offering and saying that it's a click and easy to use. Why would customers need these managed services over and above just those interfaces?
So there's a couple of different things. Probably the first one is the level of skills. So we've got a team of engineers that are skilled on a variety of cloud platforms, our own VDC, Azure, that sort of thing. So it's quite expensive for you as a business to go and hire a Azure administrator and an AWS administrator and a Vox VDC administrator, for example. Whereas you can get in our managed service, you can get a complete end-to-end solution with all those skill sets without having to go and hire your own. That's probably the one area. The second area is if you're not careful with your cloud environment, it's a very easy way to spend lots of money very quickly. So once again, we had a customer, they spun up an Azure instance. They said to their developers, there you go, there's your Azure instance. And the developers would just spin up machines to test, but they'd never shut them down again. And 2 months went by, and the customer got a fairly large bill from Microsoft on the Azure spend because they didn't realize that their developers were spinning servers up, not shutting them down and just leaving them, literally forgetting about them. It's much harder in the physical space to just leave a server running because you have to have actually bought it and motivated for it. But in this modern spin up, spin down, ease of use environment, it's very easy just to spin a server up and then forget that it's there. And with most of the cloud, in fact, all the cloud providers, you pay per hour. So the longer it's on, the longer you get billed for. And then probably the third thing when it comes to managed services is the ability to save money by shutting services down where you don't need them because they're per hourly rate. So if your service doesn't need to be running overnight, shut it down. You potentially can save up to a third of its normal monthly cost by shutting it down overnight. So that's the main three things on a managed service in the cloud space.
Yeah, no, I can also confirm that VMs or any sort of workload that is historically a test or a dev system, that sort of type of thing that gets forgotten about, right? And it can stay there, and nobody owns the thing, and that's where it gets difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure our FD or our CFO knows about that.
Yes.
Yeah. So we now know about the whats. We know multi-cloud. We're doing this, but how? I mean, I think the biggest question, especially for all the customers out there that aren't familiar with cloud and is a bit scared or hesitant. I think what are the biggest concerns that customers would have to think about when they are looking at or thinking about going to cloud?
Well, Barry's mentioned costs.
As long as you are, but
just say that again, Daniel.
I know that list is as long as our arms, but let's see if we can pick out the most important ones.
Yeah, well, Barry mentioned cost already. It is definitely a key consideration for you to take into account. And another one is security, right? Because the majority of cloud-based services are publicly accessible. It is absolutely critical to have an excellent security posture where you protect your edge firewalls, make sure you understand what sort of ports are open up, protect the management ports, password policies, application-based updates, OS updates, all of that stuff factors into the security posture, and that's extremely critical.
But just one quick thing on the security side of it. There's a perception that because it's in the cloud, it's less secure than if it's on site. But like I said earlier, Microsoft pays 4,000 people to look after their security. 9 times out of 10, the cloud is actually more secure than your on-premise environment. Are you prepared to have somebody come in and steal all your servers? That sort of thing. It's much harder for that to happen if it's in the cloud. As long as you're applying good security practices like the right passwords, the right ports that aren't opened, the right firewalls, that sort of thing.
Well, that's exactly the thing, is knowing where the line is drawn, right? Because the application and the OS is still the customer's responsibility, right?
Well, unless Barry is procured to do this, to do it for them.
Yeah. And
So
that's one of the
I
other
just
key
wanna-
features of a managed service.
Yeah, I just actually want to take a step back and go back to the cost. I know everybody's always talking about the cost of cloud, and when a sales guy comes to you, he's going to say to you, "You're going to save millions of rands because cloud is cheaper." But then, from a technical side, everybody is always cautious because what customers have to realize is that data is exponential. It always grows. There's very few times where customers will actually have less data or lessen their data over time. So it's a very big consideration. However, cloud has got great tools that allows you to manage those cost centers. Simple tools from a corporate perspective, where you can actually target your internal BUs, your business users, business units, and build them internally. Managing runtime leases for automatic shutdowns or deletion of servers. There are a lot of tools. So even though we talk a big scary game when it comes to cost, if you are versed in it, and that's part and parcel why you should look at a team that has the skills to do this, like Barry's team. So that they can assist you, the customers, or you, whoever is listening, is to actually manage that cost and make cloud a financial viable option for you. Is there anything else on those? Are there nothing else people have to worry about when moving to the cloud? No?
There's lots of things to worry about.
No, I know there is. Another thing I just want to mention from my side is especially the small and medium enterprises, always consider your WAN, your internet breakouts. Understand that when a server is sitting on site, that you're working on a local LAN, which is normally quite a lot bigger than what your 10 meg or 20 meg internet breakout is. When you are moving that server to the cloud, remember that your end users, the laptops that are actually connecting to that application, has to go over your internet unless you have an MPLS, of course. So take that into consideration when choosing cloud, because these are also cost factors to your business. If you have to increase it, it is going to cost more in most cases. Okay, so the real big question that we've faced in the past, and I think it's becoming less and less, is the cloud performance really as good as our physical hardware?
So I think yes, but Daniel, just as with physicals, there's a lot of considerations to ensure you've got the right build available for the workloads, right? And a performance evaluation is not just a one-to-one consideration, right? Because VMs, specifically infrastructure as a service VMs, gives you a lot of extra features and functionality, stuff like VM mobility, HA snapshots, right? And you know, there's also the capability of using additional high-performance functions which you don't necessarily have on-prem, right? For example, GPU processing, or function as a service where the code actually runs without any compute dedicated to it. You know, features like AWS Lambda or Azure Functions. That sort of stuff is quite key to take into consideration when planning the workload. Because VMs are not always better performing when they are large sizes, right? Because you have to consider things like I/O wait times on the CPU. For example, if a VM is assigned 2 vCPUs, it has to wait for 2 available cores to run, right? That sort of complexities with VM infrastructure as a service VMs is important to take into consideration. Because if you've got a host that's got, I don't know, just 4 threads available and you provision 12 vCPUs, the hypervisor will allow you to provision it, but you know, you cannot run that workload. It's going to be atrocious.
So just for anybody not technical, what Hendrik is saying is yes, it is.
Yes.
No. It's I think what Hendrik is trying to get to is that on the software-defined layer, there has been a lot of technology and a lot of build put into it to actually make provisioning, managing the workloads, the performance of the workloads, all of that's better than actual physical in a lot of cases. There are still some native applications that need to start like an old car where you wind it, but hopefully those applications are being upgraded.
Well, just an example there. Microsoft runs the Exchange Online completely on physical servers because Exchange itself does not run nicely on a hypervisor. And that's a fairly modern application. Well, I suppose it's a fairly modern application, but that's a particular use case where it doesn't work nicely in the cloud. Yeah. But there are hundreds of other applications that'll work perfectly in the cloud.
They still sell it as a
yeah,
exactly.
But there's hundreds of other applications that work perfectly on a hypervisor, and you can run them as much as you like, and they'll run perfectly on a hypervisor.
Yeah. So I think we've come to about a 30-minute mark here. I've got one more question that I would like to ask, and I think we can wrap up from there. So we've been speaking about applications and physical versus virtual, and we're looking at the multi-cloud environments. We've been looking at a little bit of the applications that sit on top of the hypervisor. But what else do customers have to look at and particularly when they are looking at providers who are offering them cloud services? What are some of the questions that they have to ask these providers? What are the services that we want to add to ensure robustness and to ensure that a customer is safe, is secure, all of those things? So what are all the additions?
So probably the first one would be making sure, I'm going to start all the way at the laptop or the desktop. Make sure that your internal network is correct. So you've got a proper network in place. It has the right switching. You've got decent machines. You've got a decent firewall, routers out onto the internet, a proper, preferably a fiber connection. That's becoming almost ubiquitous in South Africa now. So a proper fiber connection into your cloud environment. That's key to making sure that you have a decent experience. And that doesn't matter which cloud provider you use. As long as if you don't have those basics in place, you're gonna battle.
And Hendrik, I mean, you're one of the team that's built our cloud in Vox, which we proudly run all of our services on. These are considerations that you obviously have had to take very seriously.
Yeah, so from an infrastructure point of view, we build a robust cloud infrastructure, which includes HA failover. So, for example, if one compute node goes down, it goes to another one. We do provide carrier-grade connectivity into the infrastructure and all the bells and whistles that you require. But a key thing is the application, and how do you want to protect that? Is the application going to contain redundancy as well, or are you only relying on the cloud provider? What's your backup strategy? Are you happy just with one backup, or do you want two backups? What do you do in a ransomware attack? That sort of considerations. It's all effectively outside of the cloud provider's scope of work, right? That's something that you as an application owner or customer should be asking: how do you protect your own data on your own application? And what is it that you are taking to market, right? What is the point behind going to the cloud?
Yeah, I think from us or from my side, my personal answer to that is actually for customers to just think about things logically. If you think of the reason why you're listening to this today is because you've already realized that maybe that server on site might fall over, or somebody might spill water on it, and then your data magically disappears. But I think when you're looking at cloud services, you must have the same approach to it. Is if you buy a virtual machine in its in its entirety, your data, you still only have a single instance of that data. So consider backing up your data. We all know ransomware. We all know about our big government instance that got ransomware attacked, and everybody's suffering because of it. Backup, disaster recovery. I think security encryption of your data. Your data lives in a cloud environment somewhere on somebody else's physical environment. So I think just think about when you are approached or you approach companies who are selling you services, all the little bits that go part and parcel of that cloud service. I think this is one of our greatest strengths is that as Vox, we check all of those boxes and more from all the services that we offer outside of the cloud. Getting you to the cloud, like Barry said, that's that WAN component to it. So make sure you're speaking to somebody who's giving you all the answers to satisfy you that you're ensured that your data is safe and secure.
And just to touch on that quickly, the key to that is if you're going to move to the cloud, is to get somebody to do a proper assessment for you. So what are the resources that you need? What applications are you running? What are the dependencies between different applications? And run it across a period. So we would normally, when we do a cloud assessment, we'd normally try and run it for as long as we can, up to a month in some cases, and definitely try and run it over a month end so that you can get your CPU usage and your performance across a full month, because most businesses month end is the busiest time. That's where the highest load will be, because you would plan your cloud environment to take into account that load. And that's the nice thing about a cloud environment. You can plan for that spike and then bring the services down again when it tapers off. But it gives a nice way to cost the solution and make sure that you're not overspending on your application.
I mean, I've got a nice story of a company that on average load balances about 5 of their web servers, their web interface servers. I can't mention the company's name, obviously, but once a year they've got this great special. Now, I'm sure we're all getting closer to what company this is. But where they actually, what they do is they then multiply those 5 servers and actually end up running 100 of those web servers that they load balance for that one day. The main difference for them, and the reason why they moved to the cloud for that web server, was that traditionally they had to go and buy a whole bunch of physical boxes that sat and gathered dust in the corner, and just for one day that they needed all of that capacity. Now they pay for 5 servers for 364 days of the year, and for that one day that they need it, they only pay for the rest. So it's a great advantage, and one of the elasticity is a great advantage for customers. So just to end off, Barry, thank you very much. Hendrik, thank you very much. Hopefully we will be doing and talking about another subject very, very soon. We will keep everybody informed. I just want to see, are there any questions from anybody? Will you point them out? Please repeat the backbone hypervisor for multi-cloud. Brody, sorry. Okay, so are you referring to? Okay, sorry.
I think that was just
I'm answering. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's just based on the performance differences between the different clouds, and in reality, there's a lot to take into consideration there. Significantly, there's no real difference there because we all use compute, we all use storage. It's just the different flavors that's applicable, and that comes down to your use case. So, are you willing to pay for all flash storage, or are you willing to pay for hybrid storage? And then the same for the CPU differences.
Okay. From a network perspective, so you've got the physical core backbone, somebody like a Vox, or there's other ISPs that have national presence, I would say, on our backbone. I think from a networking perspective, if you have MPLS or if you're on a Vox cloud and a Vox network, we have a lot more advantage of managing that traffic for you and helping you with getting the latency as low as possible. Whereas if you're using a provider like Vox as your carrier, but you are in a Microsoft Azure or Google, I think that you're relying on two different companies to meet up to each other. So you've got a little less control over it. Luckily for us in South Africa is quite small. I mean, I think the state of Texas is bigger than South Africa, so latency isn't a great problem. But again, if you're looking at Vox Core Network, that's reaches out all over the up until I think London, if I'm not mistaken. Hendrik, you can correct me there if I'm wrong. I mean, connecting to even the European instances of the Azure Google data centers or AWS data centers, you know, we've got the ability to assist with that. Richard is asking, are there any assessment tools? I think, Barry, from the Managed Services Department, you run with this with the assessments for customers.
Yeah. So yes, we do. We use a tool called Cloud Recon. It's an American-based business that has some very, very powerful tools that give you what your size would be in the likes of Azure or AWS, as well as a couple of security questions inside your network. We need to normally run for, like I said, 2 weeks to a month to get the right data to push into their system. And then we also have a what we call a cyber threat assessment tool, which also allows us to check what the inside of your network is doing. It's not really that much of a cloud discussion, but it is quite useful just to check how things are going from a security standpoint. And then on the other side of it, we've actually got an IT assessment. It's not sort of a tool-based assessment, but it's a couple of questionnaires just to see what your general IT posture is like. But yes, we can offer those.
So just to follow up on that question is, if you want to migrate, we have software to give customers insights into cost and risk? Also, does Vox do migrations?
Yeah, so we've got some tools that allow us to map out the total cost of ownership on running a physical tin, for example, what the cost of electricity would be to run it yourself with the resources you need. And then obviously the saving that you would have moving into the cloud, where you wouldn't have to worry about CapEx, HR, electricity costs, all of those sort of things. We've got both those tools, and we can migrate into the cloud for you. We've done a number of migrations, lots of 365 migrations into Exchange into 365, for example, and we can also help you migrate your normal business application into a cloud solution.
And then Richard is just asking, are these available for resellers of Vox, or is it done by ourselves solely?
Yeah, we can do both. So we can do it. We will do the assessment, or we can supply the tools to do it.
Okay. So I think Vox, when Barry says Vox will do the assessment for resellers, I think we are happy to come in agnostic to ensure that you can build your brand further and help you do the assessments to ensure that you're doing it, that you're assisting your customers correctly. Are there any more questions from anybody? No? Okay, so I just want to end off just saying, I mean, obviously the whole point behind this whole webinar is that, I mean, we accept multi-cloud is here. I think Vox has taken a great stance in offering a multi-cloud strategy ourselves. And if you guys have any questions, or Hendrik offered earlier on, I'm going to chuck him under the bus here. If there's any technical roundtables that you guys would like to do, if there's any of the resellers that would like to know more, if there's any end customers, the email that was provided on the webinar mailer, just send us a mail there. We will happily contact you and come chat to you or set up one of those technical roundtables. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Barry, again, and thank you, Hendrik, again.
Cool. Thanks, you guys.
See you guys soon. Ciao.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yes, I would like to end there.